So I've dedicated this channel to discussing and playing The Sims console games. And no, I don't mean The Sims 4, but it's on console. I'm talking about the old console games, the old ones, the ones from the PS2 era. Sims 1, Bustin Out, Urbz, Sims 2, Sims 2 Pets, and Sims 2 Castaway. With my primary focus usually being on Urbz and The Sims 2, as those were my favorites. But the reason I specifically started this channel was because I discovered that the Sims 2 console had prototypes. I thoroughly read their pages on the cutting room floor and thought they sounded immensely interesting, but the pictures just weren't enough. I wanted to see more. However, when I rushed to YouTube, I discovered there was absolutely nothing on it. I don't know why, but it surprised me that nobody has showed these off on YouTube, so I decided to take it upon myself to do just that. I have many clips showing off what can happen in these prototypes, I have comparison videos, I have walkthroughs, and sorry I never finished the story mode. But I noticed my videos are getting more views than they once did. This makes me feel like I should make a whole video telling y'all about the prototypes. Especially since there's a chance y'all are more likely to stumble across this video than you are to my older clips, and I may also be able to go more in depth when it comes to these features. I will be mostly discussing the M420 prototype build. This is a build from July 29, 2005, compiled around 3 months before the retail release, which may not seem like that far apart, but in game development time, oh boy, might as well be ages. There are quite a few differences and many unfinished things. I won't neglect the other prototypes either. The two later ones are Alpha 8.14 and Alpha 8.15. These two were compiled in August, obviously on the 14th and 15th. You see, because these ones came later, they don't have as much interesting stuff as M420 does, but that doesn't mean there is nothing to talk about at all. Then there's the demo, which I won't talk about at all. That's because I already made a video talking about it. If you can excuse the fact that I was using a cheap mic back then, go ahead, click it and learn more about the demo. With that out of the way, let's get right into the video. Since M420 is an early prototype, it's needless to say that it's going to be very unfinished, with many cast items incomplete or objects just refusing to work. The opening and endings are very unfinished as well. Scenes aren't properly rendered and placeholder models are everywhere. But hey, at least we get some guy-on-guy action, right? Or maybe it's more accurate to say clone-on-clone action. As I said with the cast items being unfinished, many of the hairs are unfinished. Some look as though somebody took a pair of scissors to them and just went crazy. A lot of the hair accessories only make them worse. There's also many unfinished clothing, some even straight up lacking texture. I compared every Creator Sim item in this prototype to the final version. They're long videos because there's just so many Creator Sim items to cover. But they are worth checking out if you want a more thorough look at this prototype's Creator Sim. Many objects don't work properly, like, let's try the comic case. I want to see what wacky adventures Darius and his babes are up to. Except, aw dang, my sim won't open the comic case. Guess we'll have to wait until the game's finished to check up on Darius. What about the metal detector? I'd like to find the Urbz and play that instead. It sure is taking a long time to find something, but let's just be patient. Let's just be patient. Wow, it feels like it's taking forever. Oh, I'm never going to find anything, am I? Also, when you're making a sim, you best make sure you're happy with their appearance, because you cannot go back to edit them. The wardrobe does not work at all, and even if you manage to get it to actually take you to create a sim, it won't save your sim's changed appearance. Even sleeping doesn't always work. Your sim will go into bed and then hop right out. They won't get any sleep. Wait, they don't look that tired, do they? Oh, they are tired, but the needs don't even work in this game. Well, they do work, but the panel doesn't reflect their changes. The need bars on the panels will only drop that to halfway, and then they stop visually draining, but in reality, your sim's needs are dropping. Because it's hard to tell what your sims need, this makes it extremely easy to accidentally let your sim die. Yes, socialization is broken. To an extent. While all the socialization animations appear to be finished, there's one problem. Okay, let me try to explain this the best I can. The Sims 2 console has this interest feature in its socialization. What is interest? Well, if your sim does more socializations that the other likes, their interest will go up. This makes it easier to befriend them as it rewards you with more friendship points. The interest can go down if your sim does too many social moves that the other dislikes. But the problem with this prototype is that this feature doesn't work quite right. It seems that no matter what social you do, the interest will always go up. This eventually causes even rejected socials to gain friendship points, and easily assuring that you get a friend every time. You think the wants and fears are finished? Think again. Many are missing. And honestly, the personality points might be broken too. I noticed that when I press start and check them, it never displays the accurate personality points I gave to my sims. In story mode, sims have inaccurate or different personalities. Interestingly, story mode seems to work better than the free play mode. For example, in free play, if you get a job, it doesn't work. The carpool just never arrives. However, in story mode, the jobs do work as the carpools do arrive. It's very, very safe to assume this is because story mode was made first and free play was developed later. It makes sense why they should focus on story mode first, as that's the main point of the game, with free play just being this little side mode. But you can also tell it was developed first just because the sims in the lots are more finished, as well as certain things just function better, except objects like the metal detector still doesn't work. In free play mode, none of the pre-made families are here. The only pre-mates that exist are the ones that haven't been moved in yet. These are two default male sims with the names Bobo and JJ, and yes, they are named after the Urbz characters, as they even use their thumbnails as placeholder portraits. The lots are also empty, aside from the first one that's very unfinished. Sims will also just weirdly break in this game. What do I mean? Well, this is what I mean. Sometimes sims will show up with holes in them, sometimes it gets worse than the others. By that I mean sometimes almost every single part of them is missing. And weirdly, no, this doesn't happen every time. Sometimes later, the same sim will show up and they're mostly normal. This can also happen to your own sims too. The burglar is one of the worst enemies in this build, eviler than Torin. When he shows up, he usually has a broken AF appearance, and then his laugh. Oh, that laughter. It, along with his jingle, repeats endlessly. There is nothing you can do to get rid of this jerk either. You try to capture him and your sim just won't. You call the police and she just walks around, slides around, and does nothing. The worst part of it all, you can probably tell from these clips, but he slows the game down to an unbearable crawl. Once he shows up, it's excruciatingly hard to continue playing. It's best just to leave the game after this. Don't save. If you save, he'll be there when you load the game again. By the way, if you're ever playing this build for funsies, it's best to save frequently. because there are many things that'll happen in this game that'll cause you to reset without saving and thus losing progress. If there's any progress to be made in this. There's a plethora of broken and unfinished features in this build. I won't go over them all because that would take ages, but I just want to give you an idea of how unfinished this build is. The retail build also has cheats. 2 versions, debug cheats and player cheats. What are the differences? Player cheats are, well, cheats intended for all players. Players can access them just by pressing certain buttons on their controllers. Developer cheats, however, are entirely different. Under most circumstances, they have to be enabled through coding. They usually look like this, a bunch of numbers. I'll admit, I haven't a clue how you enable these on a physical PS2, but on emulators, it's much easier as they just give you an option for them. Just paste them in a notepad, the emulator creates, and you're good to go. With this build though, you don't really have to do any of that. Almost all the debug cheats are enabled by default. Now, I may not go over every debug cheat available in this build, just because 1, there's a lot, 2, some I may go over in other sections of this video, and 3, I already did a video showing off every single cheat from the cheat gnome. If you're really curious, you can check that video out. It's also quite long because there are many cheats. But I will go over the gist of these cheats. Developer cheats are made to help the devs properly test the game. Many of them are powerful cheats that may or may not mess up the game, hence why these cheats are completely disabled when the players get their hands on these games. Because this was a very early and very buggy build, naturally it makes sense for the developers to have these cheats enabled at all times. Some of these cheats include testing the pop-up boxes and notifications, with a few unused ones being shown, or Urbz Leftovers. Changing the time of the day, spawning certain NPCs, and my personal favorites, make me hate everyone and be miserable. And kill them all, yes, yes, die. Anyway, on top of the cheat gnome, you can also find various debugged actions by interacting with other sims and objects. With sims, you can just choose any social interaction you want, regardless of relationship status. With objects, well, most of them are just the option to break them, which includes the television. What's interesting about this is that televisions cannot break in the retail build, at least not with the use of cheats. When you break a TV, if you're not using the fast forward function, it takes your sim 10 in real life minutes to repair it, which that's like 10 hours in Sims time. And as I pretty much mentioned earlier, with debug cheats enabled, you can also break TVs in the retail build, and yes, it takes the same time. So while this shows that breakable TVs were planned at one point, it must have not gone far as they never bothered to fix the ridiculous long times it takes to repair them. Though, I do wonder why this feature was removed in the game. For some reason, you can also light rugs on fire. Fun! Not only was Sims 2 made from the same engine as the Urbz, it actually started development as the Urbz 2. Alas, due to the Urbz poor sales, the sequel was cancelled and the game was retooled into the Sims 2 console instead. As a result, there are many Urbz Leftovers, from objects in build by to the Urbz characters making appearances themselves. Very strangely, Kiki Blunt serves as the Repo Man in this build. Why is this so strange? Because the Sims 2 Repo Man exists in this build. You can find him by summoning him in debug cheats. See, there he is. But I'm guessing that during this build, they must have recently completed the Repo Man model, but have yet to replace Kiki with him. Kiki Blunt does not visit if you fail to pay your bills, but instead will randomly spawn. This was likely so that the devs could test the Repo Man and how he functioned. She will always demand you to pay up. You can never say no to her, as it just causes the dialogue box to repeat. How selecting yes goes depends on what game mode you're playing. As I've mentioned earlier, free play mode is an unfinished nightmare. Therefore, once you tell her yes, Kiki just leaves. If only getting rid of her is this easy in the Urbz. However, in story mode, she just doesn't leave. The lazy gal finally does her job and takes something. If you're wondering why she looks like a demon from the deepest depths of hell, this is because she's missing her textures. This is a common trend you're gonna see with leftover and placeholder models. In the Urbz, you want to see Captain Catastrophe because he's our hero. The charming man puts out fires as well as bring Urbz back to life. He's essentially the Jesus Christ of the series. The same cannot be said in M420 build of The Sims 2. If Captain Catastrophe shows up, it's quite catastrophic. Captain Catastrophe has no rhyme or reason. He spawns at random, usually in the middle of the lot, and when he does, it's time to reset. It doesn't freeze the game as you can switch to different sims, but he does cause the simulation to freeze, essentially soft locking the game. While I know the point of the many leftover Urbz in this game, I'm really not sure what Captain Catastrophe's purpose was beyond angering you. And if you thought you could get away from the PC's pink soup, yeah, nah, this build suffers from it as well. Pink soup will live on forever. I once came across Slim Freddy as well, the Chinese food delivery guy. Like everything else in this game, he was extremely broken and missing his textures. He only appeared for a few seconds, then disappeared. I've only seen him once, so I'm still unsure if he's supposed to do anything or not. Remember those lovable pets from the Urbz? They exist in this build. Well, they kinda. They exist in the sense that they died and you couldn't handle the grief, so you tried to bring them back and they just didn't come back right. With the cheat gnome I mentioned earlier, you can spawn them, but they're always invisible. Despite being invisible, can you still interact with them normally? Not really. There are still indeed their old options. However, selecting them usually does nothing. Sometimes it may cause their shadows to appear. Specifically, the monkey's T-posing shadow may appear on top of your Sim's shadow. Maybe it's trying to play the feed animation, but failing to, although they will still urinate on the floor sometimes. Spawning these pets will cause the game to slow down. A lot of things will cause this game to slow down. Apparently though, if you're playing this build on a physical PlayStation 2, it'll always cause the game to crash. Which I imagine the game must be practically unplayable on a physical PlayStation 2, as using the cheat gnome isn't the only way to spawn these pets. Just like the rest of the Urbz characters, these pets will sometimes spawn at random without you doing anything. I imagine when they randomly pop up, it will likely cause the PlayStation 2 to crash as well. Also, for some reason, when a sim rejects a woohoo, the thumbnail for the monkey is used in the speech bubble. Yeah, I am not going into details with this dude. I've already covered him so many times in videos dedicated to him, as well as in a quick section on The Sims 2's Cutting Room Floor article. Check those contents if you want to learn more about this dude. But he's the reason why you sadly won't ever see Darius or the other villains in this build, because he overwrites all their models. While Jade, JJ, and Bobo do not make any actual appearances in this build, their thumbnail portraits do. They're all used for Sims with the default male appearances. JJ and Bobo are literally named after their thumbnails, but this Sim that uses Jade's thumbnail is a Sim named Ghost, who technically exists in the retail build. If you have the bug cheats enabled and an NPC cycler on, you can see him. He has a unique appearance, appearing like an old-timey witch elder. Ghost also exists in the Urbz, but with a younger appearance and with Loco's hoodie on. To this day, I still don't know what Ghost's purpose was, why he has unique appearances, why he's named Ghost, and why he's usually only found within this NPC cheat. JJ's thumbnail is also used for the maid as well. It's fitting, but he gets used twice? It's understandable. We adore JJ here. While not an herb, the repairwoman uses the repairman's thumbnail from the Bustin Out game. The Sims 2 console may have reused some animations from the Urbz, but creative sim poses and animations are actually slightly different in the final build. They have better posture, meaning they aren't leaning to the side as much as they were in the Urbz. Their hands are also in a different position. But the M420 build hasn't yet edited these animations, thus they look exactly like they did in the Urbz, still leaning to the side and with their palms out. Many of the options in the cheat gnome were taken straight from the Urbz's cheat mode. There's the relationship particles one, which shows the exact same relationship gain animation from the Urbz, except instead of the stars, they've been slapped over with the Sims 2 relationship icons. Then there's the change subculture, which seemingly does nothing, but interestingly, when you look into the animation files of the prototype, all the district walk animations still exist, but they've been overridden by the default Sims 2 walk cycle. This was likely to prevent the player's sim from using one of the Urbz walk cycles if they used this cheat. Then there are useless ones that just have no effect, such as max all skills, send Zam message, give all power socials. Do you remember how the Sims thumbnails look in the Sims 2 console? They were much smaller than the ones in the Urbz, and all the Sims are facing the same way from the shoulder up. These thumbnails are actually different in the M420 build. In this build, all the Sims thumbnails are mugshots of the characters facing forward to the camera, with a big grin on their face. But doesn't this look familiar? To me, it looks an awful lot like the default player Urbz thumbnail from the Urbz. Very, very similar, if not the exact same pose. What's even more interesting is that in the retail build, not all of these thumbnails were changed. The Smiths still used the exact same style. Since all the rest of the story mode Sims had this thumbnail style but were later changed, I wonder, were the Smiths having these unique thumbnails a developer oversight? Were they supposed to change as well, but the devs forgot to? Maybe they intentionally kept them because they thought it was fitting for aliens to have different thumbnails, but the Greys are also aliens, and their thumbnails are the same as the rest of the pre-mades. Perhaps because they're better at pretending to be humans, they get the same thumbnails? Or maybe it was just a developer oversight after all. If you remember Creative Sim well in the Sims 2 console, you'll remember that the style icon was a pair of scissors cutting a string of cloth. In the M420 build, this is different. Now, it's understandable why this icon was changed in the retail build. It doesn't really fit the rest of the game's style, but you know what it does fit? The Urbz. However, this icon was never used in the Urbz. Since The Sims 2 was originally the Urbz 2, it's very plausible this is one of the only actual Urbz 2 leftovers we have. Since in the M420 build, debug cheats are enabled by default, this applies to the build by catalog as well. Here, you can find some Urbz Leftovers, namely just the particles. You can buy the simoleon sign for jobs, the clothing shop icon, and the build by shop icon. I wish there was more leftovers to find in build by, but alas, this is it. However, while we're at it, perhaps I'll quickly show you other unique items you can find in build by, not necessarily Urbz related. And yes, you may notice that buying objects rarely drains your bank. As I've repeated, this build hardly works.
Takuba.
Zeglebaran, Vikesh, Zegna Vikesh. Claudia.
In story mode, if you remove the flooring outside, yes, you can remove the grass. There is actually flooring from the herbs underneath it. This flooring doesn't seem to exist in free play mode, but that's likely because, like I said, free play mode was highly likely made after story mode. If you didn't know, in the cancelled Urbz 2, they were planning on adding children. Unfortunately, they couldn't get too far with this due to technical difficulties. Although, when I was playing through the game's story mode once, I heard something odd.
Slavesh.
Now that was the only time I ever heard it, and I don't know what triggers this sound effect, but I'm fairly certain that this is the voice of a child from the PC version of The Sims 2. Now, what's this doing here? Could this be a result of them testing children at one point, but never going very far at all? The Sims 2 console actually uses many assets from the PC version. Many of the hairs are edited versions of the ones from the PC, and in this M420 prototype, there are unused animation files from the PC's Creator Sim, which means they might have been using many Sims 2 PC assets while making this game, seeing what works and what doesn't. Now, I could go through all the audio files to see if I can find this kid's voice again and see what's specifically named in the files, but the problem is there are just thousands, and I mean thousands of files in the audio folder. It would take me ages to test them all. I tried looking up names that it would obviously be, such as using the same name that Bustin Out called them, which always had a K to indicate that's a kid sound effect, but I just couldn't find anything by trying to look through it like that way. This actually featured different music than the retail build had. It has the Sims theme, Lemon Jelly Remix, which was replaced with Stop and Sim General MIDI remix in the retail build. It also has the full version of Sim Time Sim Place Lemon Jelly Remix, which exists in this retail build, but only the first few seconds of the loading jingle. The full version was replaced with the hyper remix of Sim Time Sim Place in the retail build. Though personally, I always preferred the Lemon Jelly remix of Sim Time Sim Place. Those bobs were just so much fun. This prototype had a problem where if you paused the simulation, not the game, but the simulation, the music will always play. This is super annoying because if you have a radio in your house, this will always cause another song to play after you've unpaused the game.
Enlena utritu iloishne.
In the retail build, pausing the simulation does not play any music and stops all sound effects in radios without causing the radio to play another song. If you've played a lot of The Sims 2 console, you can probably just hear your sim crying because they're lonely. You probably remember them crying into their palm, lonely, lonely Sims. But this wasn't the original animation for social needs desperation. The M420 build has a completely, entirely different animation, which this features a sim seemingly losing their mind and they start talking to their hands to alleviate the loneliness. Even though the original animation has a lot of personality, I'm assuming they changed it because the crying one is simpler and may get the point across better. While many lots don't look drastically different in this build, mostly just unfinished, Sunset Canyon has some interesting differences. It has a big pile of sand here, which completely lacks collision. It has what appears to be horse feeders, I guess. Then it has this, a gallo. It also lacked collision. While I don't know why the horse feeders were removed, and sand pile was likely removed because they either couldn't fix the collision problem or they didn't want to make the lot too crowded, I imagine the gallo was likely removed due to being too morbid. There was a suggestion that at one point, you could possibly choose your own grandparent and create a sim, as you can go up to their portraits and there's seemingly a directional button to change it. Sadly, this has no effect. Why would this have been a feature? It's possible instead of complete randomization, this can allow you to pick your favorite looking grandparents and maybe get a better randomized sim based on them. Not sure why it was removed. Maybe it didn't work as intended, since that's somewhat evident in this build, and maybe they just couldn't get it working right. Yes, there are actually some Bustin Out Leftovers in this build as well. They're just not as common as the Urbz Leftovers. One of the random visitors is the firefighter from Bustin Out, and yep, like the other leftover models, he is also made of pink soup. He doesn't have a name, and uses the Urbz placeholder icon as a thumbnail.
Seka!
Sopnia?
Wash the coop.
Tassel, tassel. Mott, mott.
When you look in the newspaper, you can find all the jobs from Bustin Out, though selecting one seems to have no effect. And as I mentioned earlier, the repair woman uses the Bustin Out's repairman thumbnail. And the Sims 2 retail build has the right fire teppanyaki table from the Bustin Out, but with a different appearance. In this M420 build, it's the exact same model whipped from Bustin Out. I imagine why The Sims 2 ended up simplifying the design was to save space on the disc. Remember, this was a big game for consoles. And while Bustin Out had a more elaborate and fun design, you can see it's lower in graphic quality. In the retail version, free play and story mode was completely separate from each other, but in the prototypes, the story mode sims will visit free play lots and your free play sims can even form relationships with them. Keeping story mode sims off of free play lots seemed to be a problem that the devs greatly struggled with, considering this problem persists in the later prototypes as well. Not only do these sims visit often, but they don't know how to leave. While some of them are smart enough to leave, but many visitors will stay until they die. Yes, you heard that right. They will stay until they eventually die. Usually of starvation, but sometimes of boredom or loneliness. This is a problem. How? Because the visitors will struggle to die. This causes the game to start terribly lagging. Unlike the Deef, at least the Sims will eventually die. It just takes them a while. As I believe I've already said, you need the patience of a saint to play this build. Even then, ghosts don't seem to work right in this game. Big surprise. They usually stand still in whatever place they died. Oh, and the Grim Reaper also doesn't work quite right. In the retail build, he only stays outside, usually strolling by the sidewalk. In this build, Grim Reaper goes wherever he pleases, including inside your home. Oh, you can also invite him to swing with you and have a pleasant chat. The AE arcade cabinet went through a few changes. In the M420 build, it has the same texture of an arcade game from the PC version of The Sims 2, specifically the Amazing Métier arcade unit. Then in the Alpha 8.14 and 8.15, it had a more circular maze pattern, until finally changed in the retail to have a more generic appearance. You could also turn the light bulbs on and off, and even break and repair them. Actually, like the breakable TVs, this is something that does exist in the retail build as well, as long as you have debug cheats enabled. This was something that could happen in the Urbz, and I suppose they were planning on implementing it into The Sims 2 as well, but decided to scrap it, but not completely remove it. Along with unfinished things, the fences are completely unfinished. All of them have placeholders from the older games instead. To be honest, I kinda dig the chain link fence, and I wish it was included in the retail build. There are many things cool and wild about this build. If you're interested in learning even more or looking at the things I've already mentioned in depth, then be sure to check out my other videos. I have videos of me regularly playing this build, and videos of me demonstrating things that can happen in this build. I also have videos of me playing all of these prototypes, where I have no commentary other than some text notes pointing out certain differences. If you want to see more about them, some of these videos are over an hour long, so you can get a good feel of them all. Now, the primary focus of this video is the M420 build because, as I've mentioned, it was most interesting to me because it was oldest, thus had the most differences. So I'll quickly go over these two to give y'all an idea of all these prototypes. Alpha 8.14 is the one I haven't played much at all. Why? Why? Because it has no debug cheats enabled. Because of this, if I want to see the differences, I'll have to play through the story mode regularly. And, yeah, I'm not really sure if I feel like playing through an unfinished game story mode just to find differences. Especially when there's a build made literally a day later that does have debug cheats enabled, so I imagine there aren't too many differences between the two prototypes. But what about the free play mode? Can I try that? Yeah, also no. You see, Alpha 8.14's free play mode is completely unplayable. The problem is that all free play houses are made crazy expensive, meaning it's impossible to move in unless you bulldoze the lot. That'll make the lot affordable enough to move in. Except, then your sim has no money left. I'm talking zero simoleons, flat broke. And since there are no cheats in this build, and the newspaper boy never seems to appear, there is no way to earn money, thus you can't build a house nor buy any objects. This means your Sims are doomed to die a slow, painful death. What I have bothered to play of 8.14, there are still some problems with it. Like M420, the golden wants are still not in their right place, which should be at the very top of the wants bar. The background in the window of Create a Sim is still set during nighttime rather than daytime. You still zoom much closer into your sim than you can in the retail build, which is more accurate to how Create a Sim worked in the Urbz. Which, I'm gonna be honest, I actually preferred this over the retail build, just because it made it so much easier to look at the accessories you're giving to your sims. Now let's talk about the Alpha 8.15 build. This build was compiled literally a day after 8.14, and I imagine the reason is because they enabled debug cheats in this one, which makes it easier to test. Certain objects are still different from retail build in this one. As I mentioned earlier, the AE arcade cabinet has a different texture. This plant, which I can't be bothered to remember the name of right now, has a different texture than it does in the PS2 version of the retail build. This plant has a different texture throughout the platform releases, the Xbox One looking the most detailed. I'm guessing this is because the Xbox had better graphics and can handle more than the PlayStation 2 or GameCube could. In the prototype, however, the PS2 plant still had more colors, but it doesn't look quite right. Again, the golden wants still aren't in the right place. Oh, and some wants still use placeholder or different icons. There are also some new debug options, like, shooing your sim, and, First attack by JJ in. Yeah, I haven't a clue what this is because I don't think it does anything. JJ certainly isn't summoned to kick the Sims' butt, which would have been entertaining. There's also something below that unique cheat which says piercing, and I can't understand the rest. Looks like it's been taken over by Zalgo. You guys know Zalgo, right? You guys? Tell me you guys remember Zalgo. Tell me I'm not this old. Zalgo has text intentionally appearing to be glitchy. The words would be overtaken by numerous characters in Unicode text, and there was even still a generator to use this with. Edgy kids loved using this to make their creepypasta scarier, and anyway, there is a delete sim cheat which M420 desperately needed whenever that pesky burglar visited you. See? Now isn't this hell? Oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no, 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 no. It also deletes your sim. This means you've been soft locked, maybe hard locked if saved, and you have to restart the game. What about free play? Unlike in the build literally made a day before, free play does work. In this, the JJ and Bobo Sims still exist. In story mode, Sims still visit the free play lots even though they shouldn't. And this may be surprising, even funny, but this build is less stable than M420. Which, how could that be? This build is clearly more finished than M420, but I swear to y'all, this build's free play is far more prone to crashing, and for seemingly no reason. You see, in the M420 build, it does have its crashes, but usually there's a rhyme and a reason for them. Captain Catastrophe appearing is random, but when he does, you know the game is going to technically crash. If you try to do anything too crazy, like mess around with certain debug options, the game may crash. But with this build, the game will just crash at random times for no real reason. Infrequently, there are times when I can't even play free play for more than 5 minutes before it crashes. And guess what? Visitors still stay for too long, and they still struggle to die, or worse, wet themselves, which you know what that means. It causes extreme slowdowns. But if there's a positive, it's that the slowdown doesn't last as long as it did in M420. Sadly, the earliest prototype currently available is the M420 prototype, but we do have footage of builds that were even older. Before showing these off, I want to give a shout out to YouTuber Macsim X2, just because they provided me with a huge folder of Great Sims 2 pre-release material, which made it even easier to talk about this without having to dig it all up myself. So, let's talk about them. What were these builds like? For starters, at Walkwell Acres, not only was Felicity and Ozzy living there, but we also had the Caliente sisters. There's even a unique intro where Nina expresses how much more fun Walkwell Acres is, oddly stating it's more fun than Pleasantville, even though Walkwell Acres is in Pleasantville. I think Nina had one too many. And your sim also has dialogue, which your sim doesn't say anything in the retail build. Actually, Walkwell Acres doesn't have an intro at all in the retail build. And wait, have I been calling her Felicity? Yeah, her name wasn't always Felicity. Footage shows that at one point her name was Hillary. Also, to circle back to the Caliente sisters, both of them wear unused clothing, which closely resembles their PC counterpart outfits. Nina wears a shirt that isn't in the retail build, and Dina wears her iconic black dress, which isn't available in the retail build either, but I kinda wish it was, since I prefer it over Dina's final look in the console game. Nina is also wearing a belly button piercing from the Urbz. She might be using it as a necklace, I can't really tell. In this build, all the premades had unique portrait thumbnails, more similar to how the Urbz premades all had unique rendered thumbnails rather than all using the same pose like in the retail build of the Sims 2 console. Most interestingly, the socialization mode had a fixed camera. In the retail build, you can freely move the camera around as your Sims socialize, but in these old clips, a camera followed the animations just like they did in the Urbz. Honestly, I preferred this just because it makes the animations even more stylized, but I suppose they thought it would be more interesting to be able to move the camera yourself and look at the animations from any side you want. The build also used Urbz sound effects as placeholders, strangely sounding like they used the ZAM noises rather than the actual select noises from the Urbz. The TV also used Urbz channels as well, and needless to say, the UI is quite different. Now if this prototype still exists, I am begging either a current or former EA employee to leak it. Please, you would be my hero. I would love to play this build and be able to delve even deeper into it like I can the M420 build. But for now, all I can do is show it off. Anyway, that's all I have to say about these builds. I hope you found this video interesting, and if you did, be sure to like it and subscribe to the channel. As I've already gone over, I have more content like this on my channel, and I will be having more in the future. Anyways, hope y'all all have a good day.